Under the neon glow of a sold-out stadium, George Strait raised his Stetson one final time, his voice catching on a note that carried more weight than any chorus before. Fans held their breath as the country legend, king to some, straight to the heart, to all, paused mid-ballad, glimpsing at the edge of the stage where a single photograph rested on an empty stool, a candid snapshot of his wife, Norma, her warm smile forever frozen in sepia tones. The roar of the crowd softened to a hush, as if the thousand-strong audience sensed the gravity of this moment. Tonight's performance wasn't just another tour stop. It was the crescendo of a career defined by love songs and honky-tonk anthems, now tinged with a raw, unspoken sorrow. George Strait was saying goodbye, not to the stage, but to the wife who had been the unseen lyric behind every hit. For more than 40 years, George and Norma Strait's marriage weathered the highs of platinum records and the lows of private struggles. They met in 1971 at a local dance hall in Pearsall, Texas. She, a high school senior with a beaded belt and an infectious giggle. He, a college freshman with a battered guitar case and a serenade promised under the stars. Friends joke that she fell for his oceanfront property charm before he even strummed the opening riff. He often credits her steadiness for the quiet confidence that made his voice soar. Behind the scenes of sold-out tours and Grammy stages, Norma served as his anchor, fielding late-night fan calls, smoothing over management squabbles, and introducing new recruits to family cookouts where she passed down her infamous pecan pie recipe. Their bond wasn't flashy. It was baked slow and low, like a well-worn Texas brisket that tenderizes with time. Yet in recent months, the melody of their life together hit a discordant note. At first, George brushed off Norma's fatigue as exhaustion from charity events and benefit shows. Then a persistent cough led to doctor visits in San Antonio, tests in Houston, and finally, a diagnosis no couple ever prepares for: an aggressive form of cancer. The news landed like a dissonant chord, unforgiving and relentless. Suddenly, the global spotlight gave way to hospital corridors. The roar of applause was replaced by beeping monitors. The camaraderie of bandmates yielded to whispered consultations with oncologists. George's world narrowed to one enduring refrain: how to use whatever time remained to honor a love that propelled him from small-town stages to the Grand Ole Opry. In early interviews, he spoke around the edges of his pain. Talking heads noted his eyes, usually tan and calm, shimmered with unspoken grief. He made a brief statement after a private benefit in Waco: "I've never been more proud to be her husband." Even country radio filled the void between songs with his clipped assurances: "I'll be back next month. We're fighting every day." But fans sensed the unspoken subtext. This tour was more than a farewell to music. It was a farewell tour for Norma. In heartfelt backstage clips, crew members described George's offstage ritual: slipping into a floral scarf she'd gifted him, carrying her handwritten note in his guitar case, and replaying old voicemails where her soft "I love you" echoes like a plea to hold on. Tonight's concert opened with the Ace in the Hole, a celebratory tune about fortune smiling on the faithful. But as the lights dimmed for, nobody in his right mind would have left her. The packed arena surrendered to tears. George's voice wavered, each lyric steeped in memory. Midway through "Carrying Your Love With Me," he stopped, closed his eyes, and addressed the hushed crowd. "This song isn't about me tonight. It's about the woman who carried me all these years." A spotlight swung to Norma's vacant stool as fans rose to their feet, tipping their hats in reverence. It was a moment of collective heartbreak, transformed into a tribute as primal as any line on a tombstone. Backstage, his band packed gear in near silence, seasoned roadies wiping tears with faded bandanas. They all knew George Strait wasn't just bidding farewell to arenas. He was saying goodbye to the love that gave his life its melody. And as the final chord faded into the Texas night, one question lingered in the stillness: how does a man who built a legacy on honest love sing on when the heart of that legacy slips away? The morning after Norma's diagnosis became public, George Strait faced a new tour reality, packing a suitcase with both cowboy boots and hospital gowns. Rather than cancel shows outright, he and his manager devised a delicate balance: perform at night, then drive through the Texas Hill Country by day to Norma's bedside. His bandmates, accustomed to late-night jam sessions and diner pit stops, traded their usual route for low-rent motel rooms near medical centers. Roadies learned to roll out equipment only after checking cell phones for doctor updates. In a rented van behind the tour bus, George kept a soft cooler stocked with Norma's favorite herbal teas and chicken soup from home, delivering care packages between sound checks. It was a logistical waltz, one moment strumming Amarillo by morning beneath a spotlight, the next watching for monitors glow under hospital fluorescence. On stage, George's mask of practiced calm cracked in subtle ways. During guitar tuning, his fingers lingered on each string as though pausing to draw strength. When he introduced, "Give it all we got tonight," he confessed, voice catching mid-sentence, "I'm giving it all for her." Even the stage crew, veterans who'd loaded in gear since the heart of country's boom, noticed his gaze drift to an empty stool offstage. In interviews, he spoke with clipped assurance. Every night is for Norma. But off camera, his eyes shimmered with a man trying to hold back a flood. Between songs, television monitors in green rooms displayed live feeds of Norma's progress. Wrinkles of worry smoothing into grateful smiles when George FaceTimed her right before King of the Mountain. To support Norma and her medical bills, George and the band converted merchandise proceeds into a private relief fund. T-shirts bearing the motto "Forever with You" sold out in minutes, raising hundreds of thousands for Norma's care and related research. Fans contributed homemade quilts, care packages, and letters pinned to display boards backstage. Some even organized prayer circles on karaoke nights, singing George's ballads as petitions for healing. Community organizations, church groups, rodeo clubs, and ladies at Quilting Bees held benefit barbecues under banners that read "Pray for the Strait family." Pastors invited George to open nights with scripture readings. He declined public preaching, but silently thanked those gatherings for their spiritual ballast. Meanwhile, George turned to songwriting for solace. In a makeshift studio tucked into a tour bus lounge, he penned his most intimate lyrics in years. Late-night sessions saw him sipping decaf coffee under dimmed lights, drafting verses about holding hands at sunrise and promising grace even in shadows. He scribbled lines on cocktail napkins. "When the wind can't bend a willow, you'll still stand tall beside me." Bandmates later recognized those lines within a new demo, a torch song he recorded to honor Norma's courage. Insiders whisper that he and his producer hope to release it as a single once Norma's health stabilizes, an acoustic tribute echoing across radio waves like a prayer at hospitals in Dallas and San Antonio, where Norma received treatment. Friends and family organized surprise serenades. During afternoon chemotherapy cycles, nurses steered gurneys into waiting rooms fitted with small speakers. George would dial in over FaceTime, guitar in hand, and serenade Norma with private renditions of "I Can Still Make Cheyenne." Other patients and staff gathered around, wiping tears and tapping feet. Hospital administrators later revealed that those impromptu concerts lifted spirits throughout the wards, sparking a pilot program pairing musicians with patients undergoing long treatments. Amid this flurry of activity, George never lost sight of his vows. On his wedding anniversary during the tour's South Texas leg, he surprised Norma by arranging a live broadcast of "All My Exes Live in Texas," replacing exes' jokes with personal dedication. A giant screen projected their wedding video footage behind him as he sang. Norma, watching from her hospital suite, lifted her oxygen mask to laugh between tears. That moment, caught on cell phone cameras leaked by delighted nurses, went viral, reminding fans that George's humor and heart held firm even under strain. As whispers of retirement grew louder, George reassured both stadium crowds and weekend riders at backyard barbecues that he hadn't decided to stop performing. But he did admit to one change. From that night on, every show would open with a personal dedication to Norma. Whether under a packed stadium dome or a fairground pavilion, the first notes of "Love Without End," "Amen," would serve as a ritual of hope. Road signs along I-35 now read "Pray for Norma" alongside mile markers, a testament to how deeply George's farewell tour had become a community embrace. Backstage packing crews, ushering out piles of vintage cowboy hats and souvenir posters, often paused to read notes tacked to the equipment crates. "Thank you for singing for our families, and we're riding with you." At night, George lay in bed beside Norma, running his fingers through her hair, the gentle hum of distant applause lulling them both. As the tour forged onward through dusk and dawn, every guitar chord and whispered lyric became an act of love, each performance a promise that, in the final verse, he would stand by the woman who had shaped his every song. The week after the tour's fifth stadium show, George began weaving Norma's battle into the very fabric of each performance. Mid-set, he slipped in a rarely sung ballad from his early days, "I Should Have Made You My Wife," and dedicated it to Norma's courage. Under the glowing floodlights, he closed his eyes and sang lines like, "When the mountains stood between us, you still reached the other side," each lyric carrying an echo of his own heartfelt tribute. Fans held their hands over their hearts, some wiping tears, others swaying gently in time. In every corner of the venue, the shared grief and love coalesced, forming a collective embrace that transcended gender, age, or background. Backstage, the ritual had grown. Before each show, George unfurled a small framed photo of Norma, taken on their wedding day, to face the empty stool. He whispered a quick prayer, sometimes brushing a stray tear with his fingertip, then glanced upward as if seeking approval from above. His bandmates and crew observed in respectful silence, understanding that this simple gesture anchored him. In the green room, guitar techs kept a fresh bouquet of Norma's favorite bluebonnets, replenished daily by the road manager. The scent drifted through the corridor, reminding everyone why this tour mattered beyond music and ticket sales. News outlets began calling it the Love and Sorrow Tour, chronicling how George's farewell to the stage became a parallel farewell to the partner who shaped his life. Late-night hosts picked up on the theme, airing twilight clips of the photo on stage, followed by George's trembling declaration, "Every note I sing tonight is for you, Norma." Social media hashtags like hashtag #SingForNorma and hashtag #StraightInMyHeart trended nationally. Fans posted videos of themselves holding placards reading, "Praying for Norma," and didn't hesitate to share personal stories of caregiving. Children caring for ill parents, spouses navigating diagnoses, connecting deeply with George's vulnerability. One particularly poignant moment unfolded at a small-town fairground in Oklahoma. The bleachers held only a few thousand, yet the atmosphere was no less intense. That night, George debuted an unreleased gospel-tinged track called "When the Morning Comes." Its lyrics about hope rising after a long, dark night. As the first chord rang out, a hush fell, broken only by distant cicadas and the soft hum of the soundboard. By the song's end, the audience joined in, voices lifting in unison, carrying an imperfect harmony filled with raw emotion. Afterward, several audience members approached the stage and presented George with hand-sewn prayer quilts embroidered with Norma's name. He accepted them with a nod of deep gratitude, draping one across the stool as a new symbol of her strength. In his downtime, George began channeling funds from ticket sales into a private grant supporting families facing terminal diagnoses. He set up the Strait Family Compassion Fund, offering travel stipends, lodging assistance, and counseling resources to couples like him and Norma. Each night's freshly printed set list bore a discreet footnote. 100% of tonight's proceeds support the Strait Fund. Fans, emboldened by his lead, organized grassroots fundraisers in hometowns, selling baked goods and vintage posters, all to bolster the Compassion Fund. Soon, letters arrived from recipients. Notes from parents who could afford to stay close to ailing children, veterans whose medical bills had once seemed insurmountable, and young couples who sent photos of themselves wrapped in bluebonnet blankets purchased backstage. As the tour's 11th week dawned, George faced a crossroads. Another major stadium show loomed, yet Norma's condition had worsened. In a rare public address before soundcheck, he told the crowd, "I'm going to give this my all, but tonight might be my most important performance yet." He dedicated the evening to celebrating life's fragility, opening with "I Cross My Heart," closing with "The Chair," the song that had first become their duet unspoken. Midway through "The Chair," he stopped, strumming the final chord and leaving it suspended in the air. Silence followed, then a gentle applause as he simply said, "Thank you for loving her with me," and walked off stage. Fans remained standing until house lights rose, unwilling to break the vigil of solidarity. That night, backstage brought an outpouring of emotion. Crew members gathered around George's dressing room, offering quiet hugs and shared memories. The time Norma sent him a care package of home-baked tamales, or the moment she insisted on meeting every new hire personally to make them feel like family. In the corner, the road manager played the demo of When the Morning Comes, its hopeful refrain resonating softly. George looked around at his team, musicians, techs, drivers, tears brimming. "You've been my family too," he said. "Thank you for holding us all up." George Strait's farewell tour has become more than a musical goodbye. It's a testament to enduring love, community solidarity, and the courage to face heartbreak in the spotlight. By the time the tour reached its penultimate stadium date at the Texas Motor Speedway, two realities had crystallized. George Strait's voice had grown richer with sorrow, and fans had become active participants in his farewell. In the morning, under wide ribbon-like clouds, local volunteers draped the venue's entrance gates with blue ribbons symbolizing hope. Inside, volunteers distributed 10,000 bluebonnet pins for every guest to wear. When George walked on stage that evening, he paused before his stool resting a framed photo of Norma, gently touched its corner, and spoke into the hushed crowd. "Tonight, I want to share some of the notes she wrote to me before her treatment." He held up a weathered note card. Its ink faded, and began reading one of her messages. "My love for you is the sunrise in my soul." An audible gasp rippled through 55,000 fans, many clutching tissues as they felt the vulnerability pouring through the stadium's acoustics. He set the note card on the stool and launched into Living and Living Well, his tone tempered by the weight of every word. Midway through the set, George called center stage and invited two fans to join him. They were selected from letters submitted throughout the tour, former cancer patients who found strength in his songs. One was a retired teacher from Amarillo whose husband had passed during George's 2015 tour. The other, a teenage girl from Lubbock battling leukemia. Under the floodlights, George led them in a heartfelt duet of Write This Down, reminding every listener that gratitude and memory could offer a healing balm. Their voices wavered together in the chorus. "Write this down, don't let a moment slip away." Tears and cheers swelled on opposite sides of the coal tunnel as thousands raised arms alongside the trio. In the quiet of intermission, a living gallery took shape on the field. Hundreds of hand-painted signs carried in by fans honored loved ones lost or still waiting. Messages like "Grandpa JD loves your music" and "Sarah is a warrior" lined the turf, illuminated by stage lights. Each sign snapped into view during a silent tribute video montage on the big screens, accompanied by instrumental rendition of Baby Blue. The hush that followed was palpable, as if the entire crowd held its breath for a collective benediction. When the evening resumed, George debuted another new song, an acoustic ballad titled Hold On To Me. The lyrics, co-written with his longtime friend Dean Dillon, spoke of staying close through the storm. "When shadows lengthen, reach for my hand. I'll be your anchor in shifting sand." Under a solitary spotlight, he delivered each line with a trembling conviction that left even seasoned crew in tears. When the final line echoed out, "Until morning finds us whole again," the stadium erupted in applause that lasted nearly 5 minutes. Backstage, roadies and engineers exchanged nods of quiet pride. They sensed they were witnessing a transcendent performance. As the show neared its final number, George returned to the photograph of Norma, covering it tenderly with one of her favorite scarves. He introduced Murder on Music Row, asking fans to stand in solidarity for every artist lost too soon, every storyline cut short. The lyrics became an elegiac chorus against a flickering backdrop of family photos and candid video clips of George and Norma, barbecuing in a backyard, dancing on cruise decks, sharing gentle smiles. The screens descended into darkness at the song's end, leaving only a spotlight on George as he whispered, "I'll love you forever." In the final moments, he closed with "The Cowboy Rides Away," his timeless refrain now layered with farewell, echoing across the oval track under a canopy of starlight. The crowd rose in a standing ovation, hats in hand, voices lifted in unison. "The cowboy rides away." In that unified roar, grief and gratitude intertwined. The night became more than a concert. It became a communal pilgrimage through love, loss, and the power of music to bind hearts together. As George embraced his bandmates one final time and walked into a salute of sparklers lining the runway, one thought crystallized in every mind. He was not ending his song, but singing it for the one who inspired every note. That final echo of devotion lingered in every heart, carrying Norma's love beyond farewell echoes. In the days after the Motor Speedway tribute, Norma's health took a turn for the worse. George knew he could not finish the scheduled tour without her by his side, so he and his manager quietly retooled the finale into a private homecoming concert at Pearsall High School's football field, the very place where he and Norma first danced together in 1971. Invitations went out to close friends, early career mentors, and a handful of contest-winning fans whose letters had always spoken of love and loyalty. A live webcast opened seats to thousands more, ensuring the entire world could bear witness to his last public goodbye. That evening, under strings of paper lanterns swaying in the warm South Texas breeze, George stepped onto a simple wooden stage. Gone were the stadium pyrotechnics and giant video screens. Instead, a single spotlight illuminated his weathered Stetson and the empty stool holding Norma's framed wedding photo. His bandmates moved quietly behind him, acoustic guitars and upright bass lending raw intimacy to each chord. When he played "All My Exes Live in Texas," he slowed the tempo, casting the familiar lines in a new light. A playful nod to the past, tempered by the awareness that this was no ordinary encore. Halfway through the set, George paused and spoke directly to his hometown crowd and the thousands watching online. He told stories of Norma's fierce support through early gigs in dive bars, her habit of jotting song ideas on cocktail napkins, and her willingness to drive long miles through gravel roads just so he could chase small dreams. He then dedicated "I Cross My Heart" to her unwavering love, his voice cracking on the final verse. Fans both in Pearsall and around the globe wiped away tears as the anthem of eternal devotion became, for one night, a prayer for Norma's healing. Their two grown children joined him on stage for the next song, a stripped-down family trio performance of Love Without End, Amen. They huddled close to the mic, singing in close harmony as fireflies danced between the lanterns. Behind them, a video montage played on a projection curtain, weaving together home videos. Norma teaching their daughter to bake pecan pies, George hugging their son after his first rodeo, family vacations by the Gulf of Mexico. The montage ended with footage of the two of them dancing at last year's anniversary party, arms wrapped tight and smiles shining through candlelight. As midnight approached, George introduced a never-before-released gospel ballad he'd written in hospital waiting rooms, "Carry Me Home." Its lyrics spoke of guiding love through darkness and the promise of gentle mornings. A local church choir, assembled in secret by Norma's pastor, joined him under the lantern glow, their voices lifting in a tender chorus. When George sang, "Hold Me Close Till the Dawn Breaks Through," the choir's harmonies swelled like a benediction. Those listening in hushed silence felt the collective weight of both loss and hope intertwined in every note. After the final song, George remained on stage alone, spotlight tracing his silhouette against the open night sky. He spoke softly, "This is not the end of our song. It's a promise that I will carry your love with me, no matter where I go." He placed his guitar at his feet, knelt beside Norma's photo, and rested his Stetson on the frame. In that moment, the boundary between performer and person dissolved. Fans cheered, singers wept, and the evening became an intimate love ritual more potent than any arena could deliver. Backstage, crew members and family members gathered around George, forming a circle of quiet reverence. He embraced each person, technicians who'd followed him since the 80s, his children, old friends, and whispered words of gratitude. He told them he would always carry the memory of Norma's laugh in the hollow of his heart, and that every future melody would echo her spirit. When he emerged into the night one last time, the crowd of livestream viewers erupted in cheers that traveled through satellite and fiber optic networks to every corner of the country. By sunrise, the Pearsall field was empty except for verses chalked on the grass. The cowboy rides away, but her love guides him home. The homecoming concert had become a living testament to a lifetime of devotion, an event that reminded fans why George Strait's songs had always felt like honest conversations between lover and beloved. As he packed his guitar and left the stage behind, he carried Norma's photo close to his chest, ready to step into the next chapter of his life. One defined not by applause, but by abiding love. The sunrise after the homecoming concert was tinged with quiet grief. George Strait rose before dawn, stepping onto the empty football field and tracing the chalked verses with his boot heel. Everywhere he looked, Norma's presence lingered in the lantern glow that still clung to the grass. He knelt beside the wooden stool that had borne her wedding photo, fingertips brushing the varnished edge. In that silent moment, he whispered a private farewell, his voice cracking as the Texas breeze carried his words into the pale sky. The stage lights were long gone, but the echo of last night's melodies pulsed in his chest, reminding him that love's song never truly ends. Days later, Pearsall's First Baptist Church overflowed for Norma's memorial service. Hundreds stood under a canopy of oak trees, clutching bluebonnet bouquets and handwritten letters they had pinned to the wooden cross at the altar. George wore the floral scarf she had gifted him and walked to the front with steady resolve. His eulogy spoke less of her illness than of her warmth. How she welcomed strangers at every gig, stitched comfort blankets for hospital patients, and taught him that a life measured in kindness echoes forever. When he closed with a verse of "All my exes live in Texas," the fragile line between laughter and tears blurred, a fitting tribute to a woman who had blended humor with compassion. In the weeks that followed, George announced he would hang up his touring boots. He chose the same high school gym where he and Norma first danced under the Friday night lights, addressing family and a handful of journalists. His statement was simple and unadorned. This journey was always about her. Now my path turns inward. He thanked fans for walking beside them during every triumph and trial, then spoke of retiring from full-scale tours to tend the ranch where they had raised their children. He vowed to keep singing at smaller venues and family gatherings, carrying Norma's voice forward in every note. Life after the farewell tour settled into a slower rhythm. George spent mornings fixing fence posts and afternoons composing at his piano, the oak-paneled walls of his ranch house echoing with new melodies. He recorded a handful of intimate gospel tracks in a barn-turned studio, each song inspired by Norma's favorite hymns. Friends and neighbors drifted in for impromptu jam sessions, banjo, fiddle, and steel guitar weaving harmony around his acoustic strums. At twilight, he walked the pastures alone, humming refrains of "I Cross My Heart," letting the wide Texas sky absorb his sorrow and transmute it into hope. The Strait Family Compassion Fund blossomed into a legacy worthy of Norma's giving spirit. What began as travel stipends and counseling grants expanded into the George and Norma Strait Wellness Center in San Antonio, offering free support groups for spouses and caregivers. Scholarships for children of terminally ill parents doubled, and a network of volunteer chaplains provided spiritual care in hospitals statewide. Each year, on their anniversary, George hosted a benefit barbecue at the ranch, raising funds that poured into medical research and patient services. Norma's pecan pies, now baked by their daughter, stood alongside brisket and cornbread as symbols of community care that in collaboration with a documentary team. George began work on Forever With You, a film weaving home videos, concert footage, and newly filmed reflections. He sat for on-camera interviews in the family's rose garden, recounting Norma's resilience, her laughter in chemotherapy chairs, and the letters she left behind. He shared never-before-heard demos of the tribute single he'd recorded, overlaying her handwritten lyrics across sweeping ranch landscapes. Festivals around the world accepted the documentary, and test screenings brought audiences to tears. Her story, George said, is our compass through every tomorrow. Through these creative and charitable endeavors, George Strait transformed private loss into collective healing. He published a memoir titled Love Without End, penning a chapter on each song that had shaped their marriage. Annual retreats invited couples to the ranch for music workshops and marriage seminars, guided by Wes Strait's guitar licks and their mother's journaled recipes. Unseen by most, George continued slipping Norma's bluebonnet scarf into his guitar case before recordings and quietly replacing its worn edges when they frayed. Small acts of devotion that underscored his enduring vow. Now, as dusk settles over hill country ranchland, George sits on the porch with his guitar in hand and Norma's photograph propped beside him. He plays the opening notes of I Cross My Heart, voice steady but tender, filling the air with the promise he made long ago. Each chord folds into the next, an unbroken thread of love woven into the very heart of Texas. When the final note fades, he gazes westward, where the sun dips below the horizon, and murmurs, "Forever with you, Norma." In that lingering silence, the legacy of their love stands eternal, proof that even when the cowboy rides away, the melody of devotion carries on.